Monday the 3rd of August 1914 was a bank holiday. Amid changeable weather, Hallaton was preparing for its annual flower and produce show. In addition to the show, there was a programme of athletic sports. The band played throughout the afternoon. There were also games and competitions including Guess the Weight of a Cake and the Name of a Doll. Few probably guessed what would happen over the next few years, or that some had played for the final time in the band. At 11 p.m. the following day, Britain was at war with Germany. Like villages all over the country, Hallaton had its fair share of men keen to join the forces, and several enlisted over the next few weeks. William Stott, the village doctor, was one of the first, joining his regiment in Liverpool within a few days of the outbreak of war. He wrote home describing his experiences at the Battle of Neuve-Chapelle, March 1915, where he served as an officer in the Royal Army Medical Corps.
The field ambulance have to work under very trying conditions. It is a great ordeal to go along a road constantly under heavy shell fires, with dead horses, shattered vehicles, and large holes everywhere. There is very little free time at a first aid post. When not actually attending the wounded, dugouts have to be made, barricades erected, rifles, kit and ammunition of the wounded collected, and at night sorrowing comrades go out into the orchards and fields to dig graves where their friends and sometimes foes are laid to rest.
Communication with loved ones was vital, and all soldiers on the front line could post letters free of charge. Their letters were censored by officers. The men also received letters and parcels from home, and Hallaton was no different and sent many parcels to the men of the village. In 1915, 30 men from the village received parcels. By 1917, the number was up in the 70s. The men often wrote back thanking the villagers for their parcel. One of those was Ema Driver. Before the war, he was a railway labourer at Hallaton Station and a member of the Hallaton Band. He was quick to volunteer in 1914 and was soon a member of the prestigious 7th Dragoon Guards.
December 16th, 1915. Dear Sir, I have the pleasure of writing and thanking you very much for the parcel I received on 10th. I think it was very good of you for taking the trouble and thinking of us Hallaton lads. Well, I was very pleased with it, and the cigarettes was a treat, for you don't get many fags out here. We are having very rough weather out here, plenty of rain and it very cold. Well, you must excuse a short letter, for I am just so tired of coming out of the trenches, but I wish you all a Merry Xmas and a Happy New Year. Yours obedient, E. Driver.
6 months later, Ian was killed in action. His family received the following letter.
Dear Mr. Driver, I am grieved to tell you of the death from wounds of your son. He was admitted to this hospital last night after suffering wounds to the chest and left hip. He seemed fairly comfortable last night and went off to sleep, but later on in the night he became very much collapsed, and though we did all we could to restore him, we could not prevail, and he passed very peacefully at 6:45 a.m. today. I was talking to him soon after his admission yesterday and asked whether he would like me to send a line to his home just to let you know that he had been wounded, for I quite expected him to do well at the time. He thanked me and said send my love. He will be buried by the chaplain in the military cemetery attached to this camp. Believe me to be in most sincere sympathy, yours ever truly, M.E. Vernon Harcourt, Sister in Charge, 36 Casualty Clearing Station.
Hallaton men joined many different regiments and units, such as the Labour Corps and the Army Service Corps. However, many joined the local Leicestershire Regiment. One of those was Albert Tyler, who joined the 9th Battalion of the Leicestershire Regiment. Before the war, he was a farm labourer and another member of the Hallaton Band. He was another to receive parcels from home.
Number 15048, D Company, 9th Battalion, Leicestershire Regiment, British Expeditionary Force, December 16th, 1915. Dear Sir, I thank you, Mrs. and Miss Preece, for the very kind parcel I've just received. You couldn't have sent me anything better. The pipe will be a really good companion to the trenches, and the socks will be so useful as the weather is so very bad out here right now, and we have to have fresh every day if we can. The trenches are 2 or 3 feet deep of water in places, and it takes nearly all our time pumping the water out. But I'm pleased to say that I'm getting on quite well, and still keep smiling, although it is hard to sometimes. Well, I'm so sorry I won't be writing much again now, as we're getting busy to go back into the trenches. And we've just had 4 days' rest. I now conclude again, thanking you, Mrs. and Miss Preece, for your great kindness towards me. I remain yours sincerely, Dick. P.S. Please excuse pencil.
The following April, Albert was still in France with the same battalion when he wrote concerning another parcel he had received.
Bugler A. Tyler, 15048, Headquarters Company, BEF, April the 30th, 1916. To Mr. Preece. Dear Sir, I don't know who to write and thank for the lovely parcel I received from Hallaton last week, as there was only a slip of paper enclosed with best wish to the inhabitants of Hallaton. I would be so very much obliged, sir, if you would kindly thank the people for me and tell them how much I enjoyed the contents of the parcel and what a treat everything was, especially coming from Hallaton. We have had very rough weather out here, but I am pleased to say we are out of the trenches for a rest, which we need greatly after having 7 months' continual trench warfare. But I hope with the help of the Almighty God we will soon be seeing this dreadful war to an end. Your very obediently, Bugler A. Tyler, 9th Battalion, Leicester.
Albert Tyler was killed in action on 14th July 1916 in the ongoing Somme offensive, another member of the Hallaton band who would not play again. Many Hallaton men were also wounded, some more than once, whilst others suffered gassing and diseases as well as mental illness. One of those wounded was 2nd Lieutenant Leonard Julian, who described his wounds in a letter to a War Office.
Attached 86 TRB Scotton Camp, Catterick, Yorkshire. Sir, I received a gunshot wound in the back in the action on Greenhound Hill, June the 6th, 1917. A fragment of shrapnel penetrated my back within less than an inch of my spine and lodged 5 centimetres deep between my 10th and 11th ribs. I was evacuated to England on June the 9th and admitted to the 1st Eastern General Hospital, Cambridge, on the same day. I underwent an operation for the removal of the fragment. The difficulty of the removal necessitated of a long, deep incision being made and thus greatly increased the gravity of the wound. Since then I've been engaged on light duties only and have the honour to be, Sir, your most obedient servant, Leonard T. Julian, 26 Northumberland Fusiliers.
Though most of the men served on the Western Front in France and Belgium, others were in Mesopotamia, Egypt and Palestine. Some were away in the Navy, mainly in the Mediterranean, but one also served in the Southern Oceans, and another fought at the Battle of Jutland. Hallaton was represented in East Africa, northern Russia and even Baku in Azerbaijan. Several men were on the Salonika front where Hallaton parcels also reached. One such man was Ernest Edmund Cotton.
30th of April 1916. Dear Mr. Preece, many thanks for the parcel which arrived quite safely yesterday. We had been away up country for nearly a week and were eagerly looking forward to the arrival of our mails. The weather out here is very hot. Summer has come with a vengeance. We all wear wide-brimmed felt hats, but they don't prevent us from getting very brown and sunburnt. The country we saw on our long march was very wild and hilly. The heat very trying, but the quaint people. The varying scene from day to day was a pleasant change from the daily routine of camp life. Apart from our little trip, I have nothing of interest to tell you. Nothing ever happens now. We have not had an air raid for weeks, so I'll conclude, yours truly, Ernest E. Cotton.
Though parcels and letters from home were keenly awaited, even more importance was attached to periods of leave when the men had the chance to return home. These did not happen often, and Private Fred Inchley of the 4th Leicestershire Battalion in Western France looked forward to his time at home.
France, December 31st, 1916. Dear Sir, a few lines to thank you for the parcel from the inhabitants of Hallaton. I was in the trenches at the time, so it was very acceptable, especially the pair of socks and box of cigarettes. The weather out here is very wet, so there is plenty of work to be done to keep the trenches in repair. We are out of the trenches now, having a few days' rest, so we can have New Year's Day out, although unfortunately we were in for Christmas Day, so we had to have Christmas dinner a day early before we went in. And under the circumstances, we had a very good time. I hear a lot of the lads from Hallaton are home on leave, and I shall be looking forward to mine in another month or two. I remain, Sir, yours faithfully, Private F. Inchley, 4th Battalion, Leicester Regiment.
Among those who returned on leave was George Coleman Driver. Although pleased to see her husband, Mary Driver was not so pleased with the state in which he returned, and wrote to the army on her husband's behalf to let them know.
40 Gold Street, Desborough. Sir, I am writing this for my husband, who is surprised and greatly annoyed at not receiving any money. He came home absolutely alive with vermin, although passed clean, and I had to burn all his clothes. He sits at home in private clothes until I can get the money to buy him some more to wear. I think myself 'tis a sin and a shame the way they get treated, and I hope you will think it over and return him with some money without delay, as there is not much time to get them now, and he can't go back as he is now. There was no getting rid of the lice any other road, as they were all in the seams in bunches. Believe me yours, obediently, GOW Driver of the 9th Essex Battalion.
For the men on the front line, there were not only constant fears of death and injury, but also concerns for their families left behind. Life for wives and children could be tough, and money was tight. There were government allowances for children, but these were not obtained easily, as Mary Driver found out.
22nd of February 1917, 104 High Street, Desborough. Sir, as I have had no reply back from you since I sent you my baby's birth certificate a few weeks back, I am sending to see if you have mislaid it. The name on the certificate is Reginald Driver, born on the 3rd day of December 1916. The postmaster said to me that it was about time that I heard something from you, and my husband also wrote to me from France twice, asking if I had any pay for the child. I have also had such a lot of illness just now, I could do with the money just now. Believe me yours, Mary P. Driver.
At the end of the war, the men of Hallaton began to return home. All would have been affected by their experiences, some wounded and some unable to pick up their lives where they had left them 4 years or so before. It appears George Coleman Driver was one of these.
4th September 1919, 2 Mail Court, School Lane, Market Harborough. Dear Sir, would you kindly inform me if Private George W. Driver, 43424 of the 3rd Essex Regiment, who was demobilised at the beginning of February, is drawing a pension, and whether he draws for a wife and 2 children. Since he was demobbed, he has been living with his mother at Eastgate Street, Hallaton, and does not allow me anything whatsoever, or for the children. He was discharged from the army badly ruptured, and I think entitled to something. If you would give me the information I want, I shall be gratefully obliged. Yours truly, Mrs. George Driver.
For those joyous at the return of loved ones, there are inevitably those families mourning the deaths of husbands, brothers and sons. 41 men associated with Hallaton did not return. In 1917, Hallaton was already thinking of ways to honour those who had died with a permanent memorial, even before the war was over. The leader of the parish council received the following letter on behalf of Mrs. Effie Buick.
June the 23rd, 1917. Dear Sir,
Mrs. Buick is very anxious to put up a suitable memorial upon the little green at Hallaton, near the old cross for those at Hallaton who have lost their lives in this war. I am writing to you therefore as chairman of the parish council to ask what the views of your council would be as to the erection of a memorial of this nature upon the site in question. I have seen the suggested sketch, and it would be quite a handsome and appropriate structure, and would I think be most suitable and appropriate for the position mentioned. Thanking you in anticipation, believe me, faithfully yours, Mr. G. S. Ralston. The council were enthusiastic in support of the idea, and the wheels were set in motion for the erection of the war memorial, which still stands today in Hallaton. On the 3rd of April 1918, the war memorial was dedicated. 31 names of those who died in World War I are inscribed upon it. Each name tells a different story. Altogether, over 200 men and women served in some capacity from 1914 to 1919. This exhibition brings together their lives, their experiences, and puts them together with the story of the village itself. It places them and the village into a global context, revealing that the war was indeed truly a world war.